Note, this video is not just going to be me complaining. This video is going to be me offering solutions, some of which have been tested and are being implemented throughout the world. In the early 1900s, a classroom looked like this. Today, it looks like this. See the difference? One's in black and white, and the other one's in color. No, that's not it. Truth be told, a lot has changed. But for what has changed, is it enough? Kind of ironic that I'm shooting a video on how the school system is broken in a school classroom using school equipment during school. No, this is not a personal hate letter to teachers, administrators, educators, or anyone with a hand in the education system. This is just a student expressing his frustrations at what has proven to be, at times, a flawed system. School is still a wonderful place, but these are only ways which I feel that we could improve it and make it a better place for everyone. Let's talk about what has changed. A couple of things. We got Common Core, we got technology, and we got rid of those blackboards to replace whiteboards. Now, there's a lot more, but if you notice, everything I said is not changing the what we learn, it's changing the how we learn it. For example, before, we used to learn addition. Now, we learn addition through the Common Core method. Before, we used to have to jot down all of our notes on pen and paper. Sometimes in class, we still do that, but we also have the option in some classes to take them on our laptops. Before, teachers would write on blackboards and throw pieces of chalk at students. Now, they write on whiteboards and throw erasable markers at students. I think I prefer the markers, especially if we're looking at the difference between developed and developing nations. There is a massive learning gap, but it's in how we teach what we teach, not what we're teaching. Over the past 300 years, the what has stayed generally the same, even though the how has been changing. A bigger issue is learning. Sure, school tells you what to study, but do they tell you how to study? And the answer is yes, they do. Many of you have heard of the flashcard methods, the Cornell note methods, taking notes on videos, lecture notes, all these kind of different study techniques that school will teach you. But how can you study when you're not able to get to the study table in the first place? How can you learn at a good university when you can't afford to go there in the first place? What happens when you're stuck under a mountain of debt so high that you can't see the top? How can you learn when you... Oh, hold up, y'all gotta see this TikTok. And that's the problem. What I just did as a joke right there is something that happens to a lot of students for real. That is the reality. Kids might sit down and try to start working, but suddenly their phone dings. They got a notification from Instagram or TikTok or their favorite creator on YouTube, like the Meister, just dropped a new video. And now they're distracted from their work and they're watching the new content. Problem with schools, at least in America, they teach you math, they teach you science, they teach you history, they teach you English, they teach you PE, and a foreign language, and maybe some electives. But here's the problem. If you notice, I didn't mention a single class on how to pass interviews, how to present yourself in the world, how to build good relationships, how to network, how to manage your money. We have an economics class, but that doesn't go into personal finance. There's no class on how to file your taxes. There's no class on how to dress well. There's no class on how to have good posture. And there is no class for basic life skills. How are we supposed to navigate in the world when the skill set we've been taught for 12 years is math, science, history, English, and one foreign language? That doesn't work. Now, instead of me harping on about problems, simple solution, make one class called life skills class where you teach all that stuff. Or if you're a motivated student like me, make a life skills club on campus and teach all the stuff that school doesn't teach you 30 minutes a week for the whole year, every year. You can knock it out. There are solutions waiting for anyone who wants to find them. But this is one of the few solutions which is accessible to students too, and for us to be able to make a change. Now let's take a look at another thing, lectures. If you are not a visual learner, or if you're not an auditory learner, or if taking notes for someone talking for 45 minutes straight isn't your style, you are screwed. If you need collaboration, it's kind of lacking. On average, most people don't know half the people in their classes. The emphasis on collaboration and student-led learning simply isn't there. So now let's move on to why grades are a problem and how to fix them. There was an experiment conducted where researchers took 3 groups of students, all of which had an intrinsic interest in a target activity. The first group, they were told that if they complete, let's pretend it was drawing, if they draw, they'll get a reward. The second group wasn't told anything about the reward, and at the end of the experiment, they got a reward. It was an unexpected reward. And the third group, they just drew for fun. They didn't get any sort of reward, nothing like that. The researchers went on to track these kids later on. It was proven beyond a doubt that the students who were rewarded at that time and who were expecting the reward were less motivated to do this activity for personal pleasure in the future. That is kind of how grades work. Grades are a toxic system of extrinsic motivation, punishing you for when you do bad work and rewarding you for when you do good work. What that leads to is people stop wanting to experiment. Risk takers decrease because they know if they do something risky and the risk backfires, then they get punished. In many parts of America, there's a biology song project. And oftentimes, at least in my school, we were told, you perform it live, you will be graded 25% easier than if you record it and show us the video. But here's the thing, in the time frame we had, if someone put in the work to make a video, they could probably make a much better video than that would be a live performance. And wouldn't you know it, very few people made a video because they were scared of the risk of being graded harder, even though they knew they could probably make a 50, 100, 200% better work product if they made the video. I was one of the few students who made a video, and why? Because I had been rewarded many times in the past for this kind of thing. In making videos, I had always gotten good scores on my assignments, so I knew it wasn't really much of a risk for me. I knew that if I put in the effort, I could do it. But if I hadn't known, would I still have taken that risk? I don't know. That's problem number 1. Grades don't motivate you to take it one step further, to try to climb that mountain when you know you might fail. That is something that intrinsic motivation can do. Here's another problem with grades. We have 2 schools, American high school and Baltimore high school. Note, if your school is actually called this, I'm not calling you out. I just thought of the first 2 names of schools that started with A and B. In American high school, teachers don't believe in A's, but the teachers are of a much higher caliber than Baltimore high school. Now, when we go to Baltimore high school, all the teachers are giving out A's, but the students aren't learning anything. Here's what's gonna happen. To get the same amount of grades at American high school that Baltimore high school is getting, American high school students are gonna be putting more time into their grades than Baltimore high school. Baltimore high school students are gonna be getting 4, 4.1, 4.2, 4.3, 4.5, 5.0 GPAs for a quarter of the effort that American high school students are getting it at. And that means that they have more time to devote to their extracurriculars, which leads to this. If you look at Baltimore high school and American high school's acceptance rate, you will, without a doubt, see that Baltimore high school has a higher acceptance rate to the top universities. Why? Because they have a grade cutoff, and if you don't meet that GPA mark, you are out. The only way to get through is to be a varsity athlete superstar and be recruited, or to win a Nobel Peace Prize. Now, I don't know a solution to fix the second option, but for the first, let's talk about it. Here's some solutions. 1, we've got a mastery-based system where you are rewarded for learning by being able to learn more. It's an individualistic school system. And sure, that does bring up the issue of collaboration, but by making it so that the advanced students are grouped with the advanced students and the people who need more help are grouped with the people who need more help, you don't get a system where you have kids who know the curriculum beyond other kids' wildest dreams and are just relaxing in class, while there's other kids who are struggling. That creates an environment where the students who are struggling can get more help, and the students who aren't struggling can be put into an environment where they need to start learning how to take help and where they're getting challenged, because that promotes competitive drive, but more so than that, it promotes internal competition to be better than yourself. Because at this playing field, you realize that you are competing with yourself. If you're in elementary school and the whole class is on addition, but then they implement the system, you can now start competing with yourself to get from addition to subtraction, to multiplication, to division, to fractions, and you can push yourself more that way. That's number 1. Number 3 is live feedback. This is something I wish teachers would do so badly. Live feedback is so so important. Let's say you're in a chemistry class. Rather than having to take a test on the periodic table and receive feedback with a grade, by getting live feedback, you can improve your understanding of the skill you're trying to learn without having to have your future suffer for it. And lastly, we've got gamification. Gamification is my personal favorite because if you look, one of the biggest and fastest growing industries right now is video games. They're taking that hammer and hitting the dopamine button as hard as they can. That leads to your brain loving the activity and wanting to do more. By gamifying learning, it still is a form of grades, right? You're just replacing letter-based grading with points. But we like XP points. We like reaching that next bar and leveling up because unlike before, there is no cap on it. So once you hit an A, you have to still keep working because someone else might be there to beat you. And since you don't know other people's XP, you are in a constant competition with yourself. And it prevents that thing where once you get an A, you stop trying. It ingrains the habit of being a lifelong learner. And while you can make the argument of extrinsic motivation, this is less stick and more carrots than grades. If you want to see a video on that, leave a comment down below and I'll be sure to make one on that. Now let's talk about finals. For most of the world, there was some form of final test system in place. At least at my school, here's how it works. 2 hours, we have a total of 6 classes throughout the year. You have the option of taking 7. Generally it's 6 though. And on the week of finals, it's split up. On Wednesday, you have your first and second period final. First period final starts at 8:30, ends at 10:30. Second period final starts at 10:45 and ends at 12:45. And Thursday and Friday repeats, so on and so forth. Here's the problem with that. Studies have shown that after 30 to 40 minutes, it stops becoming a test of what you know, and it starts becoming a test of how good is your endurance. But that's not what we're trying to test. We are trying to test someone's understanding. You want a solution to finals? Get rid of them. At least in my opinion, there is no need for a test which tests you on everything you've learned throughout the year. Because what ends up happening is, in the current way people are teaching, you learn the concept, you take a test on it, you forget it, you learn the next concept, take a test on it, forget it, and then when final season rolls around, you cram everything you've learned before, and it is not learning. And that's not something anyone here wants. Here's another problem with test taking. It is not testing how well you know the subject that you're learning. It is testing your test-taking skills. Let's say there's something which matches up, but the wording of the question makes it false. That's not testing your ability to understand the material you've been taught. That is testing your ability to comprehend the question and the answer. And that is a test-taking skill. But if you notice, we're being taught history, not how to take a test. This goes back to my original thing. If schools want us to really be good in life, well, a part of life is taking standardized tests as of right now. So where is our class on standardized tests? I will be discussing more about this at the end of the video. So let's talk about some alternatives to standardized testing. Number 1, this is my favorite. Here's how you do it. This may be a bit more time consuming than your original test, or it may not if the teacher can time it right. Let's say if you, on average, if you give the student an hour for a test and you have 30 students, here's how I would do it. Take 2 minutes per student to divide it up. And you got to keep this a system that's moving fast. 2 minutes per student. That class is just a test day. For the other students, it's a free day or they can prep. What I would do is I would have the student come up and in those 2 minutes, teach you the concept that you're testing them on. Teaching is one of the best methods to be able to understand material better. Because if you can teach it, you damn well know it. And as the teacher of the material that you're testing them on, you can ask questions to ask them about concepts they haven't touched on yet. And you can really assess them that way. You can create a checklist out of 10. And if they hit all those things, then you give them 100%. For each topic that they don't go over or they can't answer more accurately, you just take off a point there. That's a much better way than having someone panic and have someone on the test suddenly forget what the heck the unit circle is, because that's not conducive for learning. Another way to do this is through something called portfolios. If you're an artist or if you're any kind of a creator, or if you're even in any field whatsoever, you often have a portfolio. But that's another way where you can assess the work that the student has done to see where their skill level is at. For the students who really are trying to put in work, but can't take tests because we haven't taught them how to, this is how you do it. Have them make a portfolio of all their work and put it in there. And that's what teachers can grade. Another thing that this allows as portfolios is individual and group projects. So you can see where the individual student is at, but you can also promote collaboration. That's another way to fix this. standardized test issue. Another option, once again, is gamification, game-based assessments. And some ways this can work is have the student literally stick to the name, not have them play a game based on this or gamify the assessment, but have them literally make a game, a board game or a video game or something like that based off the concepts that they're learning. I remember this is something one of my favorite projects in freshman English. We had to read the Odyssey and make a board game based on that. My team and I made almost a version of Magic the Gathering, and it was an awesome project to do. A lot of people made board games, and it's a really, really good project because it allows you to really have to apply all the knowledge you've learned to make a cohesive game. Because if you're missing information in some spots, you can't make the game come alive. Now let's talk about teaching styles. I will be the first to admit, although I have 11 years of experience being on the other side of a teacher, I've only taught martial arts. I have never taught in a school system. I've never taught in a school environment. I haven't even tutored beyond a certain extent to my friends. I don't know what it's like to be a teacher in school. Not to say that it's because of the teachers by any stretch of imagination. I have been blessed to get the teachers I've gotten. My current 10th grade history teacher, he has sparked the love for history that I never thought I would have. My current 10th grade English teacher has cracked my mind open and made me think in ways I never thought I would have to think before. My French teacher has imparted with me such a deep love for France, French, and the culture. These are things which I will never be able to repay, and that is why, above all, I need to stress. Teachers are doing an amazing job. Also, we don't pay teachers enough, but that's another video of its own. What studies have concluded is that the lecture-based learning model is not the best. Of course, here's the problem. Let's say you're in a school which is low income and you don't have a lot of funding. Well, you're not going to be able to do a lot of these other models. So there is a gap on what can be executed, but still, every little step counts. So here are a couple of alternative teaching styles. The Montessori system is honestly a good system in my opinion. Of course, it probably doesn't work at a higher level, but the way that it works is it keeps school fun, non-competitive, removes the stress out of it. And while it's not sustainable, at least to see it be pushed, not just in preschool and kindergarten, but also get pushed to elementary school is something that would be amazing to have. No 9-year-old should be thinking if they're better or worse than their classmates. But that's what happens. This next one is called the Steiner-Waldorf system. The Steiner-Waldorf is a system that prepares you for living. Steiner believed that for the first 7 years of a child's life, they should be spending that time strictly on developing their non-cognitive abilities. Of course, I disagree with some aspects of this thing, like students should not be reading before the age of 7. I despise that aspect of it. And that students should be taught to write before they learn how to read, I disagree with that. I think students should be taught to write and read at the same time. But there are issues with every system. For example, the Montessori system can't function in high school, middle school either. Here's what I love about it though. From 7 to 14, creativity and imagination are heavily emphasized. Of course, I'm not saying students should definitely be learning all these other subjects, math, science, history, English, all that stuff is important. But to be able to really push students to be creative is something that our world is lacking in. Of course, one issue is that it is very religious focused, but it can be adjusted for a more secular version. Now let's talk about the Harkness system. The Harkness system is something used by one of the top high schools in the United States of America called Phillips Exeter Academy. In fact, it was developed at Exeter. Instead of a teacher teaching through didactic recitation up on a whiteboard or a smartboard or a blackboard, what the Harkness system did was it would have students sitting around a large table, and the way teacher would teach was by talking and listening to them. And it was a much more intimate environment where students really had to take control of their own learning. The only way for students to learn is by being an agent of their own learning, is by taking that industry. Studies have shown that when students engage in their assignments, their performance and retention increases by tenfold. So this is an amazing system. The final system I want to talk about is the Sudbury system. It's an amazing system where students aren't separated by age and you have older students often mentoring younger students. It's a great system, and a lot of schools have a kind of mentorship program which does this, and it's a great way to work. It's an extremely collaboration-heavy style of learning, which really promotes learning good soft skills, like how to talk to people who are older than you and more knowledgeable than you, but also how to network and how to make a good first impression. And now let's talk about something that could fix the education system. I like to call it EduFile, and here's how it works. Create an educational history that follows students. When I walk into Montessori or preschool on that first day, my file begins. As they learn, who am I? Over the year, they add more to that. They can add my learning style, they can add my personality type, they can add, oh, he's shy but he needs prompting, or he's loud and he needs a little bit of personalized attention. Now what you have is an educational experience that caters to you for years to come. And let's say when teachers are putting groups together for group projects, they have the personality breakdown of every single person in the class. So you don't put a bunch of people who are gonna butt heads on a project together. Of course you can still do that if that is intentional, but what won't happen is the students who don't like to try are put with other students who don't like to try, and then that creates an environment where those students are stuck in a vicious cycle, while students who are giving their all are stuck in a virtuous cycle. Bring everyone into that virtuous cycle. I will never forget, in 3rd grade, I had this wonderful teacher, Miss Tahir. What she said to me one day was this. She called my parents and I in to her classroom for a parent-teacher type meeting, and it was the end of the 2nd trimester. What I remember from that day was she said, Shivansh, if you look right here, you'll read that you have a B on your report card. And if it were any other teacher, you would have gotten a C. But because I know you and I understand you have so much potential in you, I've given you a B because I know you can do better. I believe in you. Before that, I was a mix of A's, B's, and C's. I didn't get that many A's, to be honest. I just wanted to have fun. But since that day forward, I pushed myself in education. And while I'm still not a straight A student, I'm damn near close. But what I have been able to do from that is give other people that feeling. Show them that someone believes in them. And if that had carried on to my teachers, going forward and forward and forward, because my teacher there saw how I changed in the 3rd trimester. Last thing I'd like to add to this is something called a 360-degree review. In the professional world, it's where an employee's subordinates, their bosses, the people around them, the people within 360 degrees of their position, and the employee themselves, all are able to submit feedback about them, what they need to improve, and where they're at. Of course, I would cut the subordinates part out because as students, you have no subordinates. But what I would do is at the end of the year, you take the student and allow them to write an essay. The last essay that a student would write every year is on where they believe they are and what they can do and what others can do to make their educational experience better. And for teachers to be able to read that before you walk in tells you so much about the student. That system, the 360-degree review, could change education as we know it. That could bring in a new era of learning. But there's one more thing to do. At the beginning of this video, I stressed a lot on the what. And I mentioned that there's all these things that school isn't teaching us. And unlike all of the other things, which without massive effort on behalf of the whole student body of countries, or a school at least, change can't be made, by students, this is an exception. How? Clubs. The thing about what I mentioned earlier is in one club, a group of people can do it all. You can bring together your school and teach them all these skills that we don't teach. Schools don't teach investing to some extent. Some schools do have a little investment game in their economics class, but it really isn't all that much. They're not teaching students the fundamentals of the stock market, options, ETFs, all these other kind of things, how to manage your money. They're not teaching how to file taxes. They're not teaching you how to make a good first impression, how to network. That is something which you and I and all of us as students can do. If you're at there's a club that's being opened up called Life Skills Club, where we are looking to do exactly that. And I will be putting out a few videos on this channel where I talk about the stuff that we're going to be working on in that club. If you go to a different school and you're looking to create an environment or community like that at your school, my email is in the About section, just for business inquiries. You can send an email to me, and I can give you the full step-by-step guide to running the club that I have written up. Or you can take a look at the videos that I'll be posting from now until the end of summer on this, and you can use it to create your own Life Skills Club, and you create the final element that school really needs to create an amazing what to learn. You can be the one to bridge the gap between school and life and make it so that school truly prepares you for life. You can make a change. I implore you to do this, because remember this, change starts with one person, and I hope beyond everything that that person is you. for the future of education and our society.